Hi there, it's Michelle from CNC Designs. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in New Zealand. And today I'd like to show you a card I've created using the Seashell collection from Stampin' Up! And so there's the card there. We've got some embossing, some die cutting, and I've used the Pearlescent Specialty Paper, which I've used the blending brushes. So we've now got blending brushes, and it makes the color so beautiful on the shimmery paper. And then here's the inside of the card. So this card uses everything from the Seashell suite. We've got the Friends Are Like Seashell stamp set. I'm going to use one of the sentiments there and a few other stamps for the inside of the card. This matches up very nicely with a die set, which is called the Seaside Seashell dies. Difficult to say that very quickly. And there's one large die that cuts out a lovely image that you can then cut apart for the shells. And there's a few smaller dies to use to cut some other images from the stamp set. So you can stamp right onto the cardstock with these beautiful images here. Or you can do what I'm going to do, just use the embossing folder and color them in. And then the embossing folder is this beautiful 3D seashell embossing folder. So I'm going to use those products to show you how to make this lovely card. So let's get started. I'll set those aside. So what you need first is you need a card base. So I've done A6 card base because I'm here in New Zealand. So whatever country you're in, do your card base. You can have it go that way if you want, but I find it lends itself better to a portrait type of card. So you could have your portrait card opening that way. In this case, I'm having it open the long ways. So cut your card base, basically your card in half, and then fold it, score it, and fold it in half. Then 2 pieces of white. I'm using the basic white to give me the front and the inside of the card. So those are cut exactly the same size. That is 10 centimeters by 14.3 centimeters to give you just a little bit of the background cards visible. And then there's beautiful pearlescent paper, which comes in 12 by 12 sheets. Kind of hard to see with that light. So it comes in 12 by 12 sheets, and you get 2 sheets in the pack. And what I suggest you do is you cut it into 3 strips. So that would be a 4-inch strip. And I believe that is about 4 inches is about 10.15. And then die cut it. Now the reason I say cut it into 4-inch strips is because that way you don't waste any of the paper, and the die looks like it's not going to fit, but this large die here does actually fit, cut 4 inches straight across there, so just over 10 centimeters across, and that way you get the most use out of your pearlescent paper. So I've already die cut my piece here, and then what you're going to want to do is emboss those pieces. So before we emboss the piece for the front, we need to stamp on it because you won't be able to stamp that afterwards because, as you can see, it's embossed. So the first thing we need to do is emboss one of the white pieces. So I'm using the Friends Are Like Seashells, you collect them along the way stamp with Misty Moonlight ink, and I'm going to stamp on the top portion of my white card before I emboss it. Don't know if you can hear my kitten in the background. So just about 1/3, top third of there. So it just depends on how you end up decorating it, whether that's a good place to put the words or not. Okay, there we go. And then I'll put the ink away for now. And I'm going to emboss both these pieces. Now the nice thing with embossing folder, my tips for you for the embossing folder, is if you're going to do the seashells and you want them to be die cut them first, because this piece will fit nicely in there. You can even have a larger piece and you get the little dots and such images on there. But if you're doing one where you want to have the embossed images as well as die cut them first, and then when you put them in there, when you place them in your embossing folder, it lines up really nicely, especially when you're trying to line it up for the embossing. Just line up your green sections, the greenery or the seaweed basically, what I would be coloring green. So line them up where they're sitting right into the grooves, and that will give you a perfectly embossed set of shells and seaweed. So then when I run it through, I will get that lovely embossed. So if you're going to do that, I suggest die cut it first and then emboss it. And then I will also run this through the embossing folder to give me an embossed image. Now keep in mind, when you are embossing, the word Stampin' Up is the top of the folder. So if you put something through to emboss and you want the raised portion, make sure Stampin' Up is on the top, because if it's the other way around, if I put it through that way, it will be what's considered deboss, and it will have the images pressed down into that piece. So I will go do those and come back and show you. So now I'm back, and you see that lovely detail? Even on the white card, we've got a lot of detail, and then that's the embossed one there. Okay. So next step, go ahead and adhere that to the front of your card. I'm just going to use some Tombow because of all the different edges on. Actually, no, I think I'll use tear and tape just to give it nice straight. A couple pieces of tear and tape on there. Sorry about the wiggling camera. It's such a beautiful set. There's so much you can do with it, and I love the fact that you can die cut and then emboss the image all together. And then there's also dies for the other images, so you can actually stamp these images. And at the end of the video, I will show you several others that I've already made, so you can see the different ways that you can use this die and stamp set. So make sure you watch right to the end, and you'll be able to see all my other samples. So make sure you're opening the card the correct way, and then just stick that right on there. So you got to make sure that you stamp before you emboss it. Because of the depth of this embossing, you would not be able to get a nice stamped image on there if you tried to do it afterwards. So if you did this and you had forgotten to stamp first, my suggestion is just stamp on a separate piece of like vellum or even a piece of cardstock and cut it out and just put it on the top. So that's that front section done. Now the next thing we're going to do is get a little bit messy. So I'm going to bring in the blending brushes and the inks to give us the lovely effects there. But first you're going to cut these pieces apart. So you need to get your paper snips, sharp piece of scissors out. And what's lovely about this die set is it's quite easy to cut the pieces apart. You can easily see where the grooves are and just follow along and cut the different pieces apart. Now you want to keep all your little bits, so all the little extras, maybe not the teeny tiny ones, but the other excess pieces, you want to keep those because you can pop those behind the scene at the front of the card to add interest. So make sure you keep all the little pieces together, and you're just going to cut around your seashells to release them. So if you want to use this set and you just want like one of the seashells from it, maybe one of the, the big one, like the one I'm holding right now, you can simply emboss it and then cut that one out. Now my suggestion, if you only want one shell, is don't put through a full piece of cardstock to do it. measure up just how much you need for that shell, and then put that piece through right on to the die section, and then place it in the embossing folder. And then you can clean up some of the edges if you want. I don't think it really matters much because they're not going to be noticeable. Some of them will be hidden away. So there's one shell there, and I'll just quickly cut these other guys out. So there's grooves there, makes it quite easy to follow along. And just cut out all your seaweed. I think that's what this is. Around the edges, and then some of the extra bits that you don't need. So it's a lovely set because you can have one big scene all together, or you can cut them apart. Now we had this with the butterfly set. Similar thing that you die cut everything in one go, but then you can cut them apart later on. Now you got to make sure you do this first. I have tried to color these as one whole piece with the blending brushes, but it doesn't work very easily. The colors get muddled into the seaweed, so cut the pieces apart first and then do your blending. So just about finished there. And the nice thing, if you haven't used the blending brushes, which I never did before, Stampin' Up got them about a month ago is when I first tried them, is they do just like they say, you can blend different colors together. So it makes anybody, even me, look like an artist. So, and what I found when I was doing it, is if I don't like the way it came out, the look of the colors, I just add other colors on it and just layer it up to get some different looks. Now, this big piece of seaweed, I have a suggestion for you. Let's get this last little shell out. Okay, so got my shells cut apart. So there's 5 shells, and there's a bunch of different pieces of seaweed. Now the little tiny ones I'm not going to use, but this big one, even though I'm not going to use that piece there, I'm leaving it because I can hold on to that while I do the blending. It'll make it easy for me. So with the blending brushes, they come in a pack of 3. So you can also wash them after you use them and let them dry and then use them again. The color, once it's dried in there, will not stain another ink pad. But I decided to get 2 lots, so I've got 6 of them. And I've decided to just go with some main colors like reds, blues, greens, etc. So for today, I've using the colors I'm going to use. I'm going to have Misty Moonlight. I'm going to have Flirty Flamingo and Just Jade, So Saffron, and Cinnamon Cider. So those are the 5 colors I'm going to use to blend up. Now some of these colors I chose because I'm also going to use the seashell stickers. There's a set you can get of Seaside shells, is what they're called. And this pack comes with 75 stickers. There's 3 of each. I mean, there's 3 different colors and 3 different types. And you get 25 in a pack, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to see. But it's actually, the image is on shimmer paper. So this is So Saffron, this is Flirty Flamingo, and this is Seaside Spray, which is the color I'm using for the background of the card. So that's why I chose these 2 colors to blend with. Now those stickers I will be using later on for decorating inside the card. So I'm just going to show you how to do the blending. Just want to get things out of the way. So we'll start with the seaweed. So I've got my Just Jade and the blending brush, and I'm fairly new, as I said, to the blending. So you'll probably be able to watch other people's videos and get better tips from other people, but this is the way I've been doing it. And you might get some ink on your fingers, but it is our normal ink, so it does dry. So you can hold it, if you hold it further back, then you don't get as much pressure and it can be gentler. But I've seen, I was first doing it pushing, and that was doing too much pressure and making things too dark. And I've seen other people holding the edges. But the main thing is you want to swirl around on your ink to get some onto the brush. And similar to the daubers and even the sponge, you don't need to put a whole lot to start with. It might look like there's not a lot there, but there is. And then you can brush a bit off if you don't want it to be too dark. But I, especially for something like this where I'm not too concerned about having dark color in one spot, I will start from the outside and swirl in. And you can swirl around a bit. Now with these, I'm holding with my fingers, or you could use the pick a tool or tweezers or something to hold it. And I'm just coming up from the bottom. Because this is already die cut, I'm not going to swirl too much because it might bend and break them, but I'm pushing away. So I'm pushing out from the center to the parts where I don't want them to get bent. So just a bit more ink. You can dab it off, see how dark that is, or you can just start and swirl from the bottom. Now, as I said, because this is a die cut image, I'm going to pull it up. And it does make an interesting background on your scrap paper. I did die cut some window sheet to make a background piece of this, and I will be doing a card and a video in the near future showing how to use that to make an interesting background to use on a card. So keep an eye out for that. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then you'll get a notification when I have other videos coming out. So now you can kind of see, and it's best to start out light and then add layers, because you can always add two, but you can't take away. So that looks a lot lighter than the actual ink there, but it comes up quite nice on the white background card. So you can do it as dark or as light as you want. And it dries fairly quickly. Now this shimmer paper, pearlescent paper, things don't dry quite as quickly because of the shiny part to it. Like if you were to stamp on the shimmer paper, you wouldn't want to touch it for a little while because you might smudge what you've stamped. But I'm finding the blending brushes are going just fine. So just blending a few different colors. So even though I didn't rub that as much, it almost looks the same color. So I'm going to hold that extra piece that I'm not actually going to use. I'll cut that off later, but I'll use that to hold it in place. So with this, I don't want to bend my die cut, so I'm just gently rubbing it away. And the other thing is when I do the layers on the card, some of this will be hidden behind the seashells, so it doesn't really matter if I get too dark at the bottom. And that's also why I didn't cut it too nicely at the edge, because you might not even see that edge in the end. So just blending up and just brushing off a bit so I don't get too much darkness on there. And holding the sides, because otherwise I'll push too hard in the center, which I learned early on. I will show you those other cards and you'll be able to see the ones that were my learning curve. So I'll bring it up because it's not that noticeable. So see the green there? So I like that coloration. Okay, so I'm done with the green. And I'll put that aside. And now I will bring in my seashells. Now I'll bring them all in because I will change them up a bit. And I'll show you how to get different effects. So I'm going to start, I think I will start with this one. And I want to have a background of the So Saffron. So if you want the background to be a certain color, start with that one and then do your layers up. Of course, keep in mind that if your background's really dark, you won't see any lighter colors in the front. Now this, even though it's So Saffron, it is looking a bit dark. And when you put the ink on it, just swirl it around on the ink pad to get you some colors. And see, I can tap off there. Now you can hold the end like that to get a lighter layer on. Let me bring it up so you can see immediately there's the yellow showing up. Now I'm just swirling this in a circle because I'm trying to get it into the background parts of this shell. And that's how you can get different effects with the blending brushes, is the way that you move it around. So you can see that's showing up. Now I'm going to do a bit more, but I want it to go in the background. So I'm just going to swirl it back and forth in the direction where I want the ink to be showing up. So swirl it around a bit, kind of in the shape of that seashell. I also find I have to pick it up and look at it closer because at a distance it doesn't always look the same. And you can even, you know, do brushing on the edges like we do with our sponges. Okay. So I swirled around there a bit, and now I will just leave that for a second. And I will come in and try to give this a bit of a pink hue. So I'm going to get my Flirty Flamingo out, ink that up. Now I don't want the Flirty Flamingo to get right into the background, so what I'm going to do is, holding it further away, I'm just going to gently brush it over the tops. Now from a distance you probably can't see much, but when I bring it in you might be able to see a little bit of the ink color sitting on the raised portions of the shell. So I'm just going to lightly bring it over so it hits the raised portion of the shell. And so there you can probably see a bit more. And again with swirling in the center because I just want the raised portions of the shell. So holding it further back on the brush is making it a gentler brushing. So it's not getting too much into the surface. So it should only be touching the top portion. Okay, so you can see how I'm getting a bit of color just on the top of the raised part of my embossing. And it depends on which direction I go. I could go back and forth and get it to show up on the edges, but I just want it to be on that raised portion. Okay. So I'm not sure if you can see very well in that lighting. Some of the color is showing up. And then I just want to give a bit more depth just around the swirl there. So I'm just going to hold it and give a bit more depth in the swirl to give it a bit more coloration. So the fun thing with this shell set and the blending brushes, you can just come up with all kinds of different ideas and colors. And I'm just swirling it in the center there. Give me a bit more depth. Now I'm not sure if you can see. So I'll set that aside because you can always come back and do more later if you want. Now, the blue I found, for this conch shell, I want to have pink in the center, in the inside, because that's how I've usually seen them. So you can just gently rub the sections you want, or I found if I just put the tip of the brush in, so I've just got ink there on the tip, and now I'm just going to brush just the tip part where I've got the ink, so you can almost see that I'm only rubbing where the ink is in that section. And see how pink that part is. Now I'm just going to do some down here. So you can use different parts of your brush for different effects. Okay, so see how I've got the pink just on that end there. And then I think I might just add, just while there's ink still on here, I'm just going to brush this one slightly just to give it a tinge of pink. And depending on your cardstock, because this is shimmery, it's not always that obvious that you've got color on there until you take it apart. Pick it up and have a look at it. So let's stop with the Flirty Flamingo at the moment. And now I want to give myself a bit of yellow. So again, I'm just doing the tip there. And I just want the yellow to come round to highlight that little part there. So I'm just rubbing that yellow back and forth there. So I'm just giving it different layers. So now I've got a bit of yellow there. And it's not taking off the pink, it's just blending in with the pink. Okay, now that was my So Saffron. Now I am going to bring in my Misty Moonlight to add a bit more to this one. So with the Misty Moonlight, just tap it to see how dark it is. And I'm going to come in from the edge to give me background color there. So this is how you can end up with different colored shells. Okay, so just coming in from the edge there. And now you can see I've got like 3 different colors on that shell there. Okay. So I still have my pink, my yellow, and now I have a bit of the blue. So now I'm going to tap it a bit more, and now I just want to gently, using the back of the brush, just gently drag it over the raised portions to try to give me a bit more darkness to that raised portion. I have the bad habit of tapping off because of using the daubers. So now you see there's some of that raised portion is slightly darker than the rest. Okay, now you could spend all day messing around with these guys. And then I think I want to end up my other shell. I think I want to end up with put a bit of blue on this guy here. And trying to hold it is the difficult part. So there, a little bit of blue, almost looks gray because it's so small. And then I am going to try and make this one a double color. So I'll come in one way with some blue, just going with the angle of the shell, and you can just add more layers. The more layers you add, the darker sections are. So if you have a look at that, so see that's kind of a blue on that side, and I think I haven't tried this before, but I'm going to give it a go at the Just Jade. So now I'm going to just come through with the Just Jade and blend that up into the blue. So I'm going to have a blue and green shell. Nice thing is you can just make any colored shells you like. So there you go. You can see that's kind of a green and blue. That looks quite nice, I'd say. And let me get these colors out. So I can then go ahead and wash these, or you just rub it a bit on your paper to get some of the ink off. And you can see it dries almost immediately. I don't have any green on my hand there. So you can go ahead and just keep using them and change up the colors if you want, or you can just simply rinse them out and dry them and use them again. So these are my shells I've got. I'm thinking I want to add a bit of cinnamon cider to this one here, just on the tip edges, so just on the top part. just want to, there we go. So it just gives me a little kind of blending of two colors. And then I was thinking this one here needs a bit of So Saffron because it's too pink. So probably, let me just check, no. Okay, so I'm going to do a similar thing that I did to the other one, and I'm just going to come around the bottom. So now I've got a multi-toned shell. Okay, so that's my shells done and my seaweed with the blending brushes. Put those out of the way. And so now I'm just going to put that there because I don't want to accidentally get any of that color on the back of my card. And so now I am going to do up my card. So figure out where you want things to sit, and as I said, I'm not going to use that piece, so I'll just snip that off. I just use that to help me hold my seaweed in place. So figure out how you're going to layer it up and which way you want it to sit, and you definitely want to use some dimensionals to get things looking a certain way. So because I have so much green there, I'm thinking leaning that the other way might look good. Maybe I should put my shell on this direction. So you can put your shells however you'd like. Figure it out first and then go ahead and stick things down. So using dimensionals, tear and tape, Tombow, all those would be really good. So like even this one, I might stick that coming through. Can have a bit seashell coming through there. And once you have it the way you're liking, to your liking, then go ahead and start sticking things down. Okay, I kind of like the look of that, which that looks a bit different than this one here. So the bottom layers I suggest you stick straight on, and then the top layers you use dimensionals. Now one suggestion I have to show you is with your big piece you can manipulate it into, you know, a curved part, but you can also just put it in your hand and use the back of your finger or even your knuckle if you want, and just gently rub around to give it more of a curved shape. So you can do that and that won't cause any creases or break the card. So I'm just going around, and that's actually now going to give me more shape to my shell. So I can do that with all these little shells here. And even the long ones, then you can just go in the direction that the shell would normally sit. So I'm going lengthwise, but I'm just using my finger, the back of my finger, to give me some depth and dimension. So that's best to use instead of using your bone folder, because with your bone folder, these are different shapes, so the bone folder doesn't work as well to give you that shape. So just the inside of your hand. Not too much pressure, just enough to give it a bit of a shape. Okay, so now I'm going to stick these down and then I'll come back and show you. So something like this, when you give it that shape, you're definitely going to want to put some dimensionals on the back, and you might even, for that middle section, you might even want to do double dimensionals. So what I mean by that is you pop one dimensional down, peel off the backing, and then put another dimensional right on top of it. So what that's doing is giving you more height, and it won't squish because I've got two dimensionals there. So I'm going to pause the video while I decorate the front and come back and show you how it looks. Okay, so I've decorated the front, so you can see I've put all the shells and everything in there. So it just depends on how you want to do it. So those two cards look completely different because of the way I set the shells and the way I colored them. So depending on how much coloration you do. Now the other thing to do to decorate the front is with some gems. So you can get these beautiful, I think they're seashell gems. What's the name of them? I can't remember at the moment. Opal rounds. So they're called opal rounds, and they come in a set of 100, and there's two different sizes. So we've got the larger and the smaller size of the little rounds. And I'm just going to put, one right here in the center of that shell to make it look like we've got a pearl. I don't know if that's the right color shell for a pearl, but I thought it looked good there. And then I will just pop one over here, and the final one, I don't know if you can tell, let's see if I can show you. They've got, probably can't see very well, they've got like little opalescent shimmering inside them. So there. So they have little flakes inside. Not sure if you can see. They've got little flakes inside. So that's the front of the card done. And so the inside of the card, I'm going to stamp. As soon as I find where I put the inside. There it is. So I'm just going to stamp the inside with a few of these images using the same colors I already had. So just Jade to go along with my seaweed colors. And before I do that, I'm going to use the So Saffron to do some sand, little sandy bits. But I'm going to blend a bit as well. So just a little bit on the bottom corner. This is going to be the inside of my card. Oops. So see a bit of dark there. I'm going in my bad habits of pushing down in the center. So a bit of sandy bits coming there. Just going to bring it around the inside of the card. And then I'm going to bring a bit of my Misty Moonlight. I might have enough on the brush already, just to get a bit of some water effect there. So that had enough on the brush that I could just bring it right in. You can see the areas that I've blended it with the yellows turned slightly green, but that's okay. So I'm just giving an effect for the inside of the card. And now I'm going to, using my So Saffron, to stamp off a bit. And I'm just going to stamp. That's one of the stamps from the set. It just gives you some little like sandy image. So it kind of gives a bit of a sandy effect there. So I did that with the So Saffron. And now I'm going to use the Just Jade to do a few bits of the seaweed. So there's two different types of seaweed stamps that come with the set. And there's one leafy and wavy, which matches how the die has the two different types there. So I'm going to sort of stamp this one off, coming up along the edge. And I might do another one just coming out from an angle. Okay, so stamp that a few times, and then this one is quite interesting because you think it's a solid stamped image, but it's not. So have a look at this. See how that has like a break in it? It's really kind of clever the way they did that. I'm just Just gonna make it look like we've got some going up the edge of the card. And a bit on the side there. So it gives it a little bit of a seaweed scene. And now I'm going to use some of the stickers. So the stickers, there's 3 different stickers that come with this, and I thought I would decorate the inside with those. Might put, so they look like they've got a big solid color around the edge, but they're not. They come out separately and they're iridescent, so it looks quite nice when you take the sticker off. So we're just going to have, I'll just put my seashell there, and then the little conch coming out, and then the starfish will be on the other side. So you can't quite see in the video, but they're shimmery, very pretty and shimmery. So I'll pop that on the inside and I'll be done, and then I will show you those other sample cards I promised to show you. So let's just stick this down. Bit of double-sided tape. And then you can see some ways that you can do it with the stamped images. So you can decorate the inside however you like. That gives you just kind of a little scene. Pop that on the inside. There we go. So that's the card done. So friends are like seashells, you collect them along the way. So those 2 cards, slightly different depending on how you want to decorate them and color them in, and even the insides we did slightly different. So I've got one coming up a bit more. This one has more of the stickers. Alright, so if you like that, please give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe so you'll see some more videos in the near future. And if you want any of these products, contact your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. If you live in New Zealand and don't already have a demonstrator, you can go to my website, michellequitchley.stampinup.net. And you can also go to my blog at papercraftaddiction.blogspot.co.nz. I will have details of the products used will be in the description below this video, as well as on my blog. I will be doing a blog post with these cards, and I will also show you these cards in the blog post. So you can have a close-up look at photos of these. So I will start by showing you. So this is another one. This was one of my first trials. Originally I tried to do it all in one, so I got some color in different spots. And this is some of the designer series paper that you can get in this set to use. And this is one of our new punches that does an oval punch. And then just decorate it inside. So that's similar effect to those cards. And now this shows you what happens when you stamp the image. So I stamped the image. I die cut the piece, and then I stamp the image on the separate different pieces. Now the reason I have such interesting color here is I'd use the baby wipe effect technique, where you put some colored drops of your re-inker onto baby wipe, and then you use that as your stamp pad, so you end up with different colors showing up. You could also just use your Stampin' Write markers to color up the stamp before you stamp the image. So these are a couple other images that's in the stamp set, and there's dies to match to cut those out. These 3 were cut as the one large die, and then cut them apart like I showed you there. And this background here, I embossed it, and then I used the blending brush to give me that effect, and then tore it away. So it gave the wave look, and then I put some Wink at Stella in there. to do. Again, you stamp on it before you emboss, and then that's got some of the designer series paper at the bottom, and then just a little effect on the inside. So another stamped one. Again, I stamped this. So on this one, I believe I used the Stamparatus. So I used the die in the Stamparatus and then set the stamps in place. I used it to line things up. So if you were to put this down in your Stamparatus, then you can also line up your stamps to the different spots and stamp it in one go. So see, that stamp perfectly fits that section of the die. So you can use this as a template. So I cut the entire thing out with, I think that's Pear Pizzazz. And then I stamped the images of the shells on white, cut those out, and then embossed them, and then just stuck them into the spots that match up with the background. And then fussy cut around the words on that one. And then just same color technique the inside, choosing the same colors. This one here, this was also done with the same technique here, but instead of stamping on there, I already die cut and embossed the images. And so once I had finished using the baby wipes to do my stamping, I then took the embossed image and just set it on top of the baby wipe and let it soak up the colors. That's why there's some blotches around there. So the baby wipe technique can be used two different ways. You can either use it as your ink pad for stamping, or you can just press your die cuts or your paper onto it to get you the interesting images. And the background here is the same as what I showed you for the original card, but it's debossed. So what I did is I just turned the background over. So instead of being raised, it's lowered. So as you can see, it looks like a mirror image. So that's the long shell there on that side there, and that's the long shell here, because I simply flipped it over and used it the other direction. So it gives it more of a subtle effect in the background there. And then on the inside, I just stamped up some of the sand bits there. Now this one, I didn't quite like the way it came out, and I just tried to make it work. The background designer series paper is part of the Seashell collection, and I used some of the dies from a previous set. That was the Under the Sea dies that goes quite nicely with the Sea of Texture stamp set. So there's dies in here that cut out the netting as well as the little fish. So I popped the little fish, cut those out in the background there. And so here I use pens and my blends to color everything. I had die cut it on the white cardstock, and then I colored it with the blends and then tried to make it look more realistic. I don't quite like the way this came out. And then I just tucked my little shell into the background and stamped on the inside. So that's the leftover, the back side of this DSP that I have there. I use that. And then I did this card. So again, I have the embossed background, but what I did is I used the shimmer paint